The story of a civil rights hero. I'm Dr. Emily Sherwood. For more information about global education, educational policy, and literacy, please like and subscribe. So today I'm going to tell a story of someone who is from this area of Low Country, South Carolina, really close to where I live. I live in St. George, South Carolina, and she lived in Ridgeville, South Carolina. Victoria DeLee was a pioneer in the civil rights movement, and she lived in a rural area, which is a little unique when you hear about people who were big in the civil rights movements. Many times you think of people in Atlanta or Montgomery or Memphis or some of the bigger cities, but she lived in Ridgeville, which is a very small community. And when Victoria was young, she went to a school, she called it, in the oral history I read, a board school. And my first thought was that it was a school that's where people lived, a boarding school. That's not true. The reason why it was called a board school was because it was made of very poorly constructed boards, and she would drop a pencil and the pencil would go in the cracks and they would lose that pencil. And they actually had kids who would go underneath the school and get the pencil or whatever they dropped, the book that they might have dropped, because things would drop often, especially when it was windy. So this tells you what kind of school it was and how it was constructed. It was a one-room schoolhouse, and it was only for Black children at that time. So in the 1960s, when schools became integrated, that means that Black children and white children and Mexican children, in some cases schools were segregated for Mexican children and for Native American children. Sometimes there were even schools that only Native American children went to. They could not go to the white schools. So in the 1960s, there was this movement all across the country that Black children started going to school with white children, and the same with all other minorities, Native American children, Mexican American children. They all started going to school together. And Victoria's children were the first two children to integrate this little school in Ridgeville. And when they went to the school, the children were actually beaten. They were beaten very, very badly. And there was a FBI agent, a Federal Bureau of Investigation agent there, working with the schools to see if they were integrated, and he was at the bus stops. So her daughter came home very bloody and bruised and in very bad shape, and the FBI agent said, well, those kids are just teasing. So this tells you the type of atmosphere it was at that time, that even beating children was not seen really severely, and that this was really not taken seriously, the idea that Black and white children should go to school together. And in this community, that's mostly what there was. There were Black children and white children. Those were the two main groups. And eventually, she became involved in the civil rights movement, and her house actually was burned by white people who didn't like the fact that she was working towards integration. So she was very, very involved. Her daughter actually became a magistrate, the first Black magistrate in the county. And so this just goes to show how one person in a relatively rural area can make a difference, because she helped to pave the way for integration of the schools. And I'm telling this story in part because I think it's a very interesting story and it's an inspiring story, but also because integration is something that could be under attack soon with some things going on with the government, the U.S. government. So I'm going to talk about in the next video. So if you're interested in that, please hang on and watch the next video. Thank you, and have a great day and keep learning.